friends, and welcome to this Instagram Live, this special book talk that we're going to be doing with author Gerri Bauer. So I'm so excited to have her on my platform so we can discuss her fantastic series of books, which I want to expose to you because I think it's so important that we have great fictional characters whose Catholic lives just come alive. And it's just so exciting to finally have some great books that include our Catholic life in them. So let us go ahead and bring Gerri Bauer on with us.
Hello.
Hello, good afternoon. Welcome.
Hi, welcome.
It's
good to see you.
wonderful to see you, and I'm so excited. And viewers out there, you're in for a treat. If you haven't read any of Gerri's books, you have to order them right away because it's a great series, and I was so delighted, especially to read your books at the perfect time because I was reading, the first book I read was Your Circle of Light, which is a novella, a Christmas novella.
Right.
So I love that. And it just intertwined with my Advent preparation. So that was remarkable. But before we get started, for those of you that may not be familiar with Gerri, why don't you just go ahead and tell our viewers a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I've been a writer pretty much all my life. I live in Florida. My husband and I live in Florida. We have a big extended family. And I worked many years ago in journalism. I'm almost hesitant to say that nowadays because, journalism is so awful. But that's where I learned how to write and to sit down and write and not to say, oh, I don't feel like writing. And then I worked in university relations. Again, it's a writing thing. So I had a lot of training in the craft. And all along through that, I worked on my fiction because that was dear to my heart. And I have to say, it takes some time. It's a long-term thing. But what happened is I love to read romance stories. And I was reading them and I wasn't finding what I wanted in them. I wanted characters who were living the Catholic lifestyle. It's part of us. It's part of us. It's in our psyche. It's our whole lives are infused with it. It's not something we put on Sunday, to go to mass. I wasn't finding that. And it's funny because, God calls us in his time. Because when I was first trying to write these romances, I was distant from my faith. I was lapsed. And, the stuff I was turning out was terrible. And then I gradually found my way back to the church and I was feeling very good. And I had set the fiction aside at that point. Wow. It's like God came roaring back. It was like the Holy Spirit descended on me and said, you need to write a Catholic romance. I'm like, what? That's not going to, who's going to buy a Catholic romance? And you know what? It didn't matter. I'm like, if I reach one person, that's it. That's good. I'm happy. And when I sat down to write that way, the stories just started pouring out. And Franciscan Media took a chance on me as a debut novelist, printed my first, they did my first two novels. And then they closed their fiction line. So I was back on my own. And I went to indie publishing, and that's okay because, you need, and I found the Catholic Writers Guild, which is a wonderful organization because it's like-minded writers. So then I have my stories. I love history. I love historicals. And, I think if I could put it in a sentence, I would have to say they're stories of hope. They're romance novels, they're love stories, but they're stories of hope. And in this Jubilee year of hope, what's better?
You're right.
Than stories?
You're right. Perfect timing. And yes, I did find that. And that was what was so wonderful about your stories was the fact that they're grounded in family, community, faith, hope, and joy. And I've got my word of the year, joy. That's the word that I chose for this year. But that's what I found. Your stories are uplifting. Yes, your characters may go through trials. They may have
Mhm.
past hurts and struggles
Exactly.
that they're working through, and you
Right.
get to work through them. But their faith is integral
Yes.
in that process.
Yes, thank you so much. And that is so different than your typical romance novel. And that was so important to me to portray. So I'm glad that came through because the community, the family, it's all connected. You know, a love story is not just two people, it's the entire community, it's the whole family, and it's faith.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to offer an option. And, you know, I think maybe my books are a little early because I started these. The first one came out 10 years ago this year and over the past years. Then the most recent one came out in 2023. And now I am finding that people are wanting this kind of, I call them comforting reads because you're right. People go through trials, there's tribulations, there's challenges because we're showing real life, but we're showing how people get through them. And I'm finding that people are turning more and more. They want comforting reads. They want reads where they can find a sense of being uplifted because the world is pretty crazy.
It really is. And I just want to give a snippet to all of those people that are tuning in. Just a short paragraph
Okay.
of this happens to be in your circle of light. That's your Christmas
Right.
novella. And part 3 is Advent Week 3 Joy. That's
Right.
the
Right.
heading.
Word of the year.
Yes. And can you imagine me reading this during Advent? So this was a perfect book to be reading during my Advent journey too. Listen to this beautiful writing. The gold and silver colored embroidery on the chasuble shimmered in sunlight from the nearby window when Father O'Connell raised his arms during Mass that Sunday. How perfect, thought Clara, to see sunbeams dance in such a way on Gaudete Sunday, the Sunday of joy, of light and hope in a season of waiting. Ah, beautiful. We
Thank,
need these
thank you.
stories so
We need
much.
them. I truly believe we need them. Yes, we need them. And I'm glad to say that I believe that more and more writers are starting to turn and write faith-based romance. Like, I mean, there is a big Christian romance market, and it's been there for a while. And many of the books are interesting and good, and God is in them, but they're very heavily Protestant oriented. And we have there's so much more depth we can bring in to a Catholic romance, and that's what I'm happy to be sharing with the wider world.
Oh, and you do it beautifully. You're such a magnificent writer.
Oh,
And speaking of writer, I know we're going to touch on this
mm,
upcoming conference,
oh,
which you will be a presenter at the
right.
Catholic Writers Guild conference. Can you tell us a little bit about the conference and what topic will you be presenting there?
Okay, well, it's very appropriate for me. The title of my presentation is Why the World Needs Catholic Romance Novels and Some Tips for Writing a Good One. Now, the Catholic Writers Guild is about several hundred members strong, and we basically, everything's pretty much, there's a live conference, but there's an online conference, and that's the one that's coming up at the end of the month. It's January 31st, 1st, and 2nd. There are numerous presentations. Some are craft, some are faith oriented, all applying to being a Catholic writer. And the best way to find out more about it would be to go to CatholicWritersGuild.org. And if you go under the tab, I think it's community or membership, I'm not sure, but one of the tabs up front is the drop down, their drop down tabs.
Mm-hmm.
You'll find the one about the online conference. It's a great opportunity. It costs $65 for non-members and $45 for guild members, and aspiring writers anywhere on your journey. You are welcome to be here. We have writers who are multi-published. We have writers who are just starting to put pen to paper, so to speak. And It's 3 days of online presentations and prayer, and there's pitch sessions. There will be Catholic media, Catholic press will be there for people who would like to pitch their projects.
Mm-hmm.
And so I really encourage people to check it out. It's hard to get the word out in about these things. You know, the culture is we're going against cultural headwinds. And so, you know, you post something on social media and it doesn't get as much attention as it might if it were something else or something secular. And that's just something we're up against. So I try to share, and we all try to share as much as we can. And like what you're doing is phenomenal, I think, in helping get the word out to people about it. So many aspects of our faith and what's there and the resources for us. So,
Well, you know what, Gerri? I couldn't help. I love the reason I created my platform, of
mm-hmm,
course, was to share my Catholic faith in all aspects. And
mm-hmm,
I'm a voracious reader. I love stories. I love all types of stories. And so, I haven't read really good fiction in
mm-hmm.
a long time. And when I became aware of your books and I started reading them, I couldn't help but want to spread the word. And that's another thing. When we find a great book such as your series, there's things that we can do to help promote
Right.
your books.
Right.
Do you
And
want to give us a couple of tips that we can do as readers when we find a good book? Obviously, I have a platform that I can do that on, but
right.
also contacting our libraries as well, right?
Yes, in fact, on my website, which is just my name, gerribauer.com, I have a page dedicated to what you can tell your library how to find the books.
Mm-hmm.
So it's here for them. But yeah, I would say tell your library, of course, put it out on your social media, write a review on Amazon. In fact, I lost a lot of reviews when I got my rights back from Franciscan Media and I republished because I had to give new ISBNs and so forth. So I republished and repackaged everything. And I lost the reviews on the initial one, and Amazon would not roll them over to the new, edition. So yeah, reviews are a big help. Word of mouth is a big help. Uh, those are probably some of the two biggest things you have. I know many authors have email lists, and I do not have one, and I should have one. In fact, I'm taking Gloriam Marketing is offering a little mini course of coming up like next week on how to get that going. So I'm going to try and look into that because I notice when I look at emails that are coming into me, I do click on them.
Mm-hmm.
So, I should push myself out and do that a little bit more. So I'm going to try that because yes, discoverability is one of the challenges all of us Catholic creators face. We all face.
Yes, and everyone out there, I try to, if I have read a fantastic book,
Hmm.
I like to be able to pass that along to other people
Hmm.
too.
Right.
You want to have one maybe for your library that you go ahead and reread,
Right.
but buy another copy and give that as a gift.
Oh, great
You,
idea.
you
Yes,
know,
yeah,
because these stories, I can't wait to read the next one. So, and that you're at home, that's your first book
that's
in
the first.
the Persimmon Hollow series.
Right. Right. The second one is called Stitching a Life in Persimmon Hollow, and it's a much younger heroine. Um, and she has to learn what's really important. She's still attracted to the glittery, worldly aspect of things. And so she needs to mature, and she does through the book. And the third one is called Growing a Family in Persimmon Hollow. And this is a heroine who's not Catholic at the start of the book, but she is by the end of the book. And so
Mm-hmm.
it's a story throughout. And it's part of the narrative. That's a big thing in trying to make these books work. If I were to just preach, I think it might turn some readers off, but you try to work everything into the stories so that integral part of the story, just like Catholicism is an integral part of our lives. And I think that's my goal in helping that come through. And again, it's stories of love, of family, of faith, community, and we need this in this world we live in. So,
You're
yes.
definitely right. And I think as a reader, what draws me is to build relationships with the characters.
Yes.
And your characters, just I could relate to so many of your characters. And
Good.
of course, I think that's the success of a book series because we see these characters reoccur in the different books in different
Yes,
stages of
exactly.
their life.
About that because you read the Advent one, which and then you read the first one, and there's like the Billy, the boy. He's a little boy in the first book, and then he's an adult getting in a relationship in the last book. And I'm like, oh, that is, yeah. I love the characters become so real. They become so real.
Now, do you have any plans on expanding the series at this time, or?
I'm not sure. I've been thinking about it and toying about it because each one has moved a little, further ahead in
Mhm.
time. So I'm thinking about, do I want to um, do another one in this book, or do I want to start a different series? So I'm still kind of hovering there on that line. I have one that might go a little earlier in time, back to the colonial era, but I'm not certain because Persimmon Hollow is definitely part of my heart,
Oh,
so to speak.
and I can see why. I felt as in your story how you know Agnes comes from a different she just moves as a school teacher into the community.
Yes.
So you feel the pull. You feel the pull back to, as you did in like at home too. You feel
Yeah.
the pull back to a different life. But slowly but surely, it's the faith and the community and
Yes.
just the bonding that happens. And then these characters realize they have such a home there. I said, I want to live in Persimmon
I
Hollow
know.
myself. That's the
Right.
way
Yeah.
I felt.
Right. Me too. Yeah, I know. It becomes so real, and I love that part of it myself too. And then when I'm writing, I feel fully immersed. I feel like I'm there with them, and so that's
And you know
it's
what, Gerri, you're such a descriptive writer. I just love writers that really paint such an unbelievable picture
oh
of the setting, of the scenery, of nature, of the environment that you're in, that it's easy for you to then just imagine where are these characters, where they're living.
yes. Thank you. I appreciate that, and especially because it's Florida, and it's a Florida that so many people are like, "What? That's Florida?" I'm like, "Yeah, that's what Florida really was like back then."
Mhm.
And so it's so in a way it's like in a way it's a teaching tool. I think all books are. I think a lot of or good fiction or books that you really become immersed in. We learn from them all.
Yes.
They bring us. Yeah.
And that also ties into your blog because I want, and I'll link it below once we're done,
Okay, thanks.
gerrybauer.com. That,
That's yeah.
that's the site you want to go to.
Yeah, because you can reach my blog through there. My blog is on Blogger on Google, but I have a page on my website that takes you to the blog. So that's the easiest way. And the reason I say that is because you can look at what all the books are about, and you can find the information for your library, and you can find the blog posts. I think it has 3 blog posts, and then you can go, it'll take you right to the blog. And the blog is about real life Florida history. And also on my website, you can see my short stories. Now, they are not romance stories. They are more literary fiction short stories. But again, while they're not love stories, they are stories that convey the dignity of the person. That's so important to me. Anything I write, that we respect the dignity of the person.
Hmm.
And so that's you'll also find those on my website.
Beautiful. I pulled that up here on
Yeah.
my And so you have a section, a Frontier Florida vlog, domestic history, daily life, a look at the pioneer. Because for those of you out there that haven't read any of Gerri's in this particular Persimmon Hollow, this takes place in the late 1800s.
Yes. Late 1800s, 1880s,
Hmm.
1890s. Yes.
Hmm.
In
So
Florida,
it's the frontier.
it really was a frontier. It was very
Hmm.
much like the Wild West, only it was in the East,
Hmm.
but it really was a frontier at that time.
Mm. So I really encourage you to really check. That's the place. That's the go-to. I would say
Yeah.
gerribauer.com for anybody
Yes.
who wants to, take a look at the different books that you have available. Read your blog. Also, Gerri, I wanted to ask you, for those watching that are writers
Yes.
and they aspire to possibly get into writing great Catholic fiction novels. What words of advice would you give to aspiring writers watching
I
today?
I would say number one, do not write to what's called writing to market, meaning you write what's popular at this time. Write the story that's in your heart. Write it and don't worry about what others might think. I mean, people seem to either really like my books or they're like, oh, what is this? I don't even want to read it. You're never going to please everyone.
Mm,
You please yourself. You please the Lord. You learn your craft. That's super important. And if speaking of romance writing, because that's my specialty pretty much, there's some terrible, not Catholic, but overall in romance books, there's some awful, awful, awful stuff out there. And it's because they're released, they shouldn't be released yet. They're not ready for publication. You need to learn your craft. You need to persevere. You need to pray. You need to rely on the guidance of the Lord. Let the Holy Spirit speak to you. It may not be something you're actually thinking of, and all of a sudden it's going to come to you like it came to me, like you need to write a Catholic romance. I'm like, okay, let's do it. But
mm-hmm,
I do say persevere and get involved with something like the Catholic Writers Guild. You're going to find like-minded writers there. You're going to find also, if you editors and proofreaders and designers, we've got everyone in the guild. So, and even if you're not ready to start writing, you can start learning
mm-hmm,
and pick up tips from other writers. So it's a very helpful group. Definitely look into the Catholic Writers Guild. We're growing in membership. I think people are coming more aware of it. I think people are tired of I don't even know what to say, the immorality that's out there. I
mm-hmm.
think people are starting to turn back to God. I would hope.
Oh yes,
I
there has been a research, and that's been going on for a few years now.
would.
That resurgence in books,
Yeah,
in music, in even the media.
yeah.
So it's wonderful and it's refreshing.
That's
And you know what I think is, wouldn't you want to read a book that you can pass on along to someone, you know, and not feel that, oh, I wonder if they get to that part that may be a little bit uncomfortable, or,
right. Right.
there's nothing
You know,
in your books that you wouldn't be able to pass along to someone else.
that's right.
And
To
they could
age.
grow and get enriched from it and have a wonderful experience.
I hope so. That's what I'm aiming for.
Mm-hmm.
And it is in a way, for Catholic writers, in a way, it's mission territory almost. Because we don't know who we're going to reach. What if you reach a person who might be in despair and your book speaks to them?
Mm-hmm.
What better than helping bring someone, uplifting someone like that? It's like I said in the start, it's hope. The year, we're in a year of hope, and these are hopeful books.
They are. And, you know, you like to have happy endings. You like your stories
Oh,
to
yeah.
leave the reader uplifted.
Yes. Absolutely. Happy moving. I mean, life is hard. We all have our challenges. So I love the idea of turning to a book and having a happy ending.
Mm-hmm.
It's great.
Mm,
Oh,
it is.
that. Yes. I'm unapologetic about my love of happy endings in books. And I read a lot of nonfiction, but in fiction, I do tend to, I prefer those happy endings.
And, like you had said in other interviews that you've done, as we all have had hills and valleys in our
Oh,
lives and struggles. And, as a writer, you wanted to be able to have someone else that might be going through difficult and tough times who isn't at any point in their life,
right.
but to be able to pick up a book and read, and for a time maybe escape from their present anxiety
Oh, yeah.
or their tension in your life, just as you wrote your characters in a way that brought hope to them, but it was almost a therapy for you
Oh,
too.
yeah. It was because I started seriously writing these while I was dealing with infertility, and that was such a cross to bear, and miscarriages. And it was wonderful to turn to this. It did help get my mind off. And in fact, that was the period of time when I did return to faith too, because all of a sudden faith came right down there saying, I never left. God said, I never left you. I'm here,
Mm-hmm.
and a tremendous help.
Mm-hmm.
Tremendous. But the writing was something to turn to.
Mm-hmm.
What? Writing is good, even if you don't consider yourself a writer. To anyone out there who is dealing with some challenging times, even if you just jot down a few words, or journaling is recommended for people too, it can be very helpful. Or pick up a book that's going to immerse you in a happier world for a while.
Mm-hmm. That's
Away
so
from the
true. That's so true. I actually have a mass journal, and I love taking it with me to mass. There's times that sometimes they get in the wrong bag and I miss a couple of weeks, but I usually try to take the bulletin and write a couple of thoughts as far as the homily that I'm
oh,
hearing. And what
that's,
what are my takeaways? And then I write it in the journal. And then I look back, and maybe it would be a year later,
yeah,
and it's you're inspired by those little snippets of, we have great priests out there that really,
you do.
you know they they really, God speaks through them, because sometimes when you're listening to their words you say, oh my gosh, that I feel
Yes,
that he's speaking
he's
exactly to
speaking
me,
to me.
because I'm
Yeah,
going through this moment right
yeah.
now.
I think that's a wonderful idea what you do. And you know what? As you look back at that, that could be an idea for a story.
Mm-hmm.
Something to look back a year later, like, oh, I could develop that into something. Yeah, that's a wonderful idea. And you're right, because our priests are, oh, and they're so overworked, and they're wonderful. And there are many times at mass where I'm like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I didn't
Mm-hmm.
know that. Yeah,
And
it's
an
great.
adoration too. So this has been so wonderful. It's such an honor to meet you, and I thoroughly recommend, and I'll keep sharing as I'm going to be continuing to read your series
Thank,
in the Persimmon Hollow series. I'm going to be continuing to read this and share it with my audience.
thank
So
you so.
I welcome you back. If there's any projects that
Okay.
are upcoming and you'd like to share, come on back and we'll share it with my audience here.
Thank you so much. That's a wonderful, and I really appreciate you having me on today. It's been wonderful talking with you.
Thank you so much, and thank you to all who tuned in. I will be linking all of Gerri's links below, and God bless everyone out there, and take care and spread the joy of Jesus to whomever you meet each and every day. God bless everyone.
God bless. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.